Welcome back. Kathy, in 2009, you received an award. What was that about?
That was the Order of Australia Medal. It was about, I belong to lots of other women's organisations, and you don't get told that somebody's nominating you for these awards. So it was to my surprise that I'd even had an Order of Australia Medal, because I didn't really know what it was. But to my surprise, this one woman had understood the depth of my work, and so it was through that I was able to get the Order of Australia Medal. And I encourage other people to nominate other women that are doing inspiring things as well, to be able to bring out some of their stories and give them a platform.
Exactly. Congratulations. You also mentioned that your husband went through some difficult times himself.
Well, he had to pick up the pieces. We had 3 teenage children. He had to pick up the pieces of family and work, and this wife that had this condition that we didn't really understand, and I had 6 weeks radiation. Well, it must be really hard on a man to say, well, look, I can take care of this family, when if they don't have that understanding either, it's twice as much a challenge for the men as it is for the women. So there's a lot of work to be done with relationships and the mental health and the gynaecological health, and it's almost too big. But I mean, I love it and believe in it so much that I will just keep going, and some people think I'm a bit over the top, but
it's a very important issue.
Absolutely, yes. Mm.
So is there any support for men at the moment? Or?
I mean, there's mental health issues, and the men can turn to the mental health, but I noticed during Mental Health Week there was a direct link for men, teenagers and children, and gay and lesbian women, but there's not a direct link for women with depression in Australia. And I questioned with a professor on the East Coast who does research for women, and she said there is no direct link. I thought, how can that be?
Shocking.
But we don't question, you see. And probably things have changed a little bit now, but unless we question, nothing's going to change. And, we're like good girls that we just do as we're told. Well, I'm not one of those girls, I'm afraid.
Good girls rarely do what they're told.
That's right. But I've been asked to speak at a private girls' school with 100 private 15-year-old girls. On sexual health. Yes. And I'm a life member of the WA Sexology Association, but I'm finding it a challenge how I'm going to be speaking to 15-year-old girls on this topic. But I'm working that the undies is a great way to sort of think, well, I'm not going to be here talking about scary things, and I have to put some humour into it.
It's very true, and just calling a spade, not a big spoon. It does help. You say what it is, and and the props that you've brought here, I think that's a very good opening piece for,
And here's another prop that I'd like to share as well. It doesn't cost a lot of money. You just get some wire and you just twist it around. This is the ovaries, and this is the uterus and the cervix, and this is the vagina here. There's no vulva here, unfortunately, but at least it's something that doesn't cost money, but it's still simple and easy for us to get the message out.
Exactly. So with the women, I know you'll be speaking, I think it's in Bunbury?
Yes, and they're doing the Moulin Rouge theme. And to me, that is exciting, because up until now it's always been, will you celebrate the Gynae Day? But King Edward Hospital for Women in Perth have celebrated the Gynae Day for the last 5 years.
And that is the day that you started yourself,
yes,
isn't it?
That's right. That's right. And the City of Perth lit up their building purple for the Gynae Day last year. So it's like, yay, somebody's listening, but it's still a challenge to be able to get the whole world to come in and understand the need for this sort of thing.
Yeah. So with the Gynae Day, when is that?
It is the 10th of September, and it just happens to be my birthday.
Oh, wow, congratulations.
But I want to tell you how it came about, because when I had all these ladies' letters, I thought, what am I supposed to do with these? Because the powers that be would say, well, you can't do this. And so so I rang the Senator Amanda Vanstone's office in Canberra. What am I supposed to do about this? Nothing's happening. And they said, well, have a national day. And I said, how do you do that? She said, well, you just declare it. So I've now declared an International Gynaecological Awareness Day, and for those that don't approve of it, well, they'll just have to catch up, because I don't have time to waste here, and so I've just got to keep going and just look for people like you who are helping me to get the message out.
So with your work, are you working with gynecologists and doctors and other service providers in order to get the message out to the community?
Yes, I did have a not-for-profit, and I worked with a lot out of the gynaecologist and the doctors. But at this point in time, I'm a solo agent, and I'm setting up a charitable trust so that I can try and find ways to get the corporates to open the doors to this. It's really hard and somebody said because the males are mostly at the helm of that, yes, there is a lot of resistance there, but I wouldn't agree with that. I think that if the women still have so much stigma and barriers around that, and when we're strong enough and when we have a voice strong enough, we work together with the men at the top to say, look, this is really important for men and women. So, exactly. Yeah.
And to the women out there, you know, like there will be women who are watching this show and they might be going through some tough times. What advice would you give to them?
Well, I would suggest you go to the women's health centres. We have women's health centres all around the world. Reach out to your mothers or your aunties and share with them, and just make sure because I actually went to several doctors before my diagnosis, and so therefore if you don't feel something's right, well then you question and you question and you question again until you feel satisfied, because quite often female intuition is a very strong thing, so just take action.
And you mentioned that, you know, there's a lot of stigma attached to these women's issues. Yes. I think maybe we're not talking about it enough. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, it wasn't until I discovered, I was questioning why this is so. I would go to the women's organisations and there still wasn't anything on the agenda, and I thought, why is it like this? And then I discovered the word pudendum in the dictionary, and the Latin version of that word says female genitalia, one who should and ought to be ashamed, the shameful part of a woman. And so that gave me some understanding as to why thousands of years ago we were socially programmed that we don't talk about these things. But I don't think there would be a word in the dictionary for men to be ashamed of their genitalia. And so I then noticed that women call their vulva a vagina. By the way, the vulva is the external genitalia and the vagina is the internal genitalia. And then I discovered that women are confused, even in this day and age, which bit is which, and they're still talking behind their hands. And I'm saying, well, let's open the door and let's start talking about these things, because a lot of issues are connected with pornography in this day and age, and I'm coming from the direct reverse of that. It's like, hey women, yes, be proud of who and what you are.
Exactly, because this is a health issue, and like you're saying, it's affecting a lot of women out there, and not much education about it. So what's missing in our education system?
Well, I think it's the women themselves. I think we need to have a good hard look at why this is not being addressed and put it on the agenda of the United Nations Women's Organisations. Let's start talking about these things. And I know a lot of this work is under the umbrella of reproductive health. But to me, gynaecological health is just as different as a vulva is to a vagina. And reproductive health is about having babies, and gynecology is about the millions of women with gynecological health issues. And how this also affects the men and the fathers and the husbands in these women's lives. It has a huge effect on relationships and mental health. And yet, quite often, even the mental health issue, people do not see the connection between here and here for women and depression, which I sort of think, but why?
Well, it is very true, because, you know, if somebody's going through something that is, you know, as sensitive, and then there's the stigma attached to it, and then the society is not allowing you to talk about it, of course somebody's going to be depressed in going through such challenging and difficult times. But what are some of the key steps that women can take to look after themselves? Because like you're saying, there's not enough information out there, there's not enough education, and often women, they leave it until they go and see their GP and then find out, oh, it's too late.
Yes, that's right. That's right. But quite often, I don't think, because we as women don't create a lot of attention around this area, a lot of the GPs are not given enough time to have an understanding themselves. So this is not just about the women and the men learning, but it's also being able to find the funding to support these doctors and gynecologists.
Yeah. Wow, wonderful, thank you. So the last question, what are you reading and why?
Well, at the moment I'm reading a book on sexual health for young girls, and she's very out there with it, and she doesn't say, you know, women's health is fun. She's really to the point where, you know, sometimes it's not very nice, but there's other times when, you know, and it's teaching you how young boys and young girls deal together with sexual health issues. Yes. And, you know, I have to learn before I speak to these young girls. I have to learn about young girls and young boys and how to bring it together. So that's my challenge at the moment. But I do have a writer that's helping me with that. So hopefully I'll be able to nail it right.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. Well, thank you very much for this inspiring conversation.
It's all right. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. I learned so much from it, and I hope you look after your health. Thank you, and see you next week. My name is Nkandu Beltz.